we'll go into item maintenance, look at these fields. We can kind of talk through what they are, maybe different ways we've deployed those fields, and go from there.
I just realized the best part about doing the stream again,
Yeah.
I get to say my favorite thing ever.
Oh, go for it.
Uh, do I want to say it now, or do we want to wait till
I
we
mean,
get
if
to the?
you could go Pirates of the Caribbean and wait for the opportune moment. That's what it is.
Uh, stock is never a default. It's
Oh
a
yeah,
choice.
we're gonna get there. That's going on a T-shirt. I'm telling you. If we ever have merch for Atlas, that's the first thing we're releasing.
Stock is a choice, not a default.
All right, so I'm gonna pull up my favorite item. I don't know why it's my favorite. I think it's just the item ID I memorized from all this senseless data. Okay, so I think one of the things that we need to differentiate for folks is, like, I'm looking at the discount groups. That's there at the top half of the screen doesn't really mean anything. I mean, that's going to push it down to the location level. But short code, that's ubiquitous across the entire item. So let's make sure that we don't lose sight of that.
Yeah, typically, like, same thing with price family ID. If you see the word default, basically what it means is if you have that set before you start adding your locations, it's going to pull that data from that field. If you don't have a default set, you would have to manually set one in each location.
I think it actually compels you to set default discount groups. I don't think you can get
the
away with
discount, but not the price family. Price
That's
family
true.
ID is not a required field.
All right, well, let's just start with discount groups. I mean, it's right there at the top of the screen. So for me, and certainly you should weigh in on this as well with your experience with it. I mean, to me, this is very clear what it's for, right? This is like my go-to for how I'm going to manage price libraries, and supplier pricing and stuff like that, on both the sales and the purchasing side. One of the things that we see is it's all set to default, number one, or number two, these two are always the same, or it's the same list of choices that populate both. They don't have to be. I mean, it all feeds from the discount group table, which is a single table. But my point is this: you can absolutely have sales groups or sales discount groups that go based on, pipe, fittings, valves, whatever.
Right.
But then your purchase groups could be list times 0.5, list times 0.4, list times 0.37. I mean, what you want to do with these is think about, in the context of figuring out pricing, right? What's the most effective way to deploy these fields? For sales discount groups, unless you're working in something that's extremely regimented where we buy at a 0.5 and sell at a 0.7, and there are plenty of companies that do that. That's a great way to use it. But I like sales discount groups when they are set up around the same way that the person on the street out there pounding the pavement trying to make sales, the way they price. So if they say, hey, all of our fittings pricing is, you get one multiplier for all your fittings, or one multiplier for all your valves, or one multiplier for gate valves versus that type of valve, whatever. That to me is a very intuitive way to set up discount groups.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. This is when I said the D in the field. These are the two fields I was thinking about, because so many people either don't know what these are for or just don't utilize them. Now, there are some people, like if your pricing is simple, if you're a markup or markdown multiplier across the board, you're probably not going to use a ton of these. But I think in this day and age, it's very rare for somebody to be a straight multiplier like that on everything.
Yeah,
it's not very common. And I'll be honest with you, like it's one of those areas where I know enough about it to know what the area it's for, but again, so many people I see just have D's in there.
Yeah.
And it's
I
it's
mean,
kind of funny to me.
yeah, it is to me too. And so if you're asking yourself, what's my strategy here? Again, I just go back to forget about the technology for a minute. And I say that a lot because I think people too often make business decisions that they think fit the technology, but they end up hurting the business. So think about, this is how we price. When we are pricing something to a customer, it is based on the type of whatever that is, and then look at that and go, okay, we can set up pricing stratifications around that with libraries. We can have a discount group for this type of product, and that may not follow how you want to report those sales in your general ledger. That's okay. This is just for the purposes, I say it's just for the purposes of pricing. That is what should primarily be used for. That's my soapbox on discount groups. Go ahead.
I was going to say, before we again, if you've been in the system a while, you know this, but we kind of skipped over the item ID and description. Those are both 40 character fields.
Yes.
And you can use spaces and dashes and, but I think that's part of the planning is how are you going to name stuff? And every time I see somebody, we got the perfect plan. This is exactly how we're going to name everything. These two characters are this, and then inevitably 6 weeks in, something breaks it because there was, and it's hard to do that. It's hard to make your item IDs always mean something.
Yeah. Well, look, I feel like that if I had B-roll for this live stream, I would be dropping in the Mythbusters iron plate right now. Because I've been seeing a rash of scenarios lately where there are some extreme misconceptions about what you can and can't do with your item IDs and descriptions, and it's starting to get under my skin.
Yeah.
And the reason that it's getting under my skin is because, again, the tech is driving the business, and it's supposed to be the other way around.
Right.
So let's talk about this a little bit. So number one, special characters. All right. You can't have X, Y, and Z character. You have to use some sort of abbreviation. Right. Okay, look. Single quote. I'm kind of with you on that one. That one's bad because it has SQL implications. That's not to say it can't be done, but in the item ID for sure, it shouldn't be done. I might not even... I've seen them get in there before, but I technically don't think you're supposed to be able to do that. In the description, I would recommend to get single quotes. Again, it has an extremely specific meaning in the underlying database. That's the one character where I feel like, maybe you stay away from that one. But ampersands, dashes, underscores. Dashes is the one that gets me. People like, and it's usually like comes in with like e-commerce. That like people get freaky about dashes, and I don't understand why. That's an extremely common character. I think what it is, if I'm not mistaken, is because a dash has to have a special encoding in a URL on a website. It's like %20 or whatever it is. I don't care. That's fine with me. That's fine, because again, if your standard in your industry is like, can you imagine telling the fastener industry they couldn't have dashes? How would you ever communicate size and thread pitch? You couldn't do it.
No.
Yeah. So just whatever your data is what it is, and you have to figure out, like, when you're extending that to something else, a mandatory reinvention of the wheel I just don't think is right. I think you have to look at it and go, how do we bridge this gap with no real human intervention?
Yeah.
But it's a bridge. It's not must be this or must be that.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to, yes, if you ask me, would it be easier for everybody involved if no special characters ever existed in any of this stuff? Sure, of course, because, then you're just dealing with numbers and letters. But that's not reality.
Yeah.
Reality is, this is how the industry had, especially certain industries go back all the way to order notepads, and, this is just how it is. And whoever's, whether it's somebody like us or whoever's helping you with your data in general, you got to do a little extra work on the data side to make sure the business side is taken care of.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the data side isn't what brings the money in.
That's right.
The business side is what brings the money in.
Except in our company, we're different.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
we're special. But
it's about 50-50. I mean,
but yeah, no, your point is spot on, Matt. I mean, that to me, like, I think we even have something on our website that says, like, we have a business first approach, because the business should be driving everything. The strategic direction of the business is what's key. It's not, well, we're limited by our technology. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear
that. And it's the common thing we always tell people. It's like, don't worry about what P21 can or can't do. What are you actually trying to accomplish?
Right. And then we'll figure out how to get that done.
Right.
And I mean, like even to the extreme, and for the extreme example in item creation is a customer coming to us and saying, we're using serialized items. And I don't mean turning serials on. I mean, the first item number we have is item number 1 million. The next item is item number 1,000,001, then 1,000,002, then 1,000,003. That was not easy to deploy in P21, but we got it done, in a way that worked for them. And that's important to them. And that's what they wanted, was sequential item IDs. Okay. That's fine. And that works for whatever. So anyway, I think the other thing I would mention too is, and I know this field's a little farther down, but on the topic of description, Matt's correct. You get 40 characters in the main description and then an additional 255 in the extended description. And I would say, don't be afraid to use the extended description. It's easy.
No, yeah, and like it doesn't show up by default on a lot of forms and screens and stuff, but you can put it on those things
really easy.
And if you do put it like on your line detail in or item lookup, it becomes part of the smart search or inline search, whatever you want to call it. So your main description is going to be a little abbreviated, but your extended description is that use it.
I would almost rather call it short description and description. To me, I think is more accurate in this day and age. But
because 40 characters in item IDs, that's plenty of space, but in description, not really.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, let's talk for shortcodes for a second, or about shortcodes for a second. I like this to me is an unsung hero of P21 because it can be used in different ways. So I think there's really two approaches, and the approach is either it's a 1-to-1, one shortcode is one item, or a 1-to-many where one shortcode gets you too many items. So the way that it works is, if you are in, let's say, order entry or item master inquiry, wherever you're at, and you type in something that resolves to a shortcode, if there is only one match to an item for that shortcode, so maybe you're using that as, ABC123, it will just bring up that item. It'll just flip to that item ID and you're good. However, and this is where I think companies could take a lot of advantage of this with a little bit of forethought. Let's say that you're in a business, and like Fastener comes to mind to me right off the top, probably because I've worked in it before, but where you have a lot of derivatives of the same item. So it's the same diameter, thread pitch, and length, but there's 10 different finishes for it. Well, you could set up a short code where every item that shares those attributes has the same short code, and you just leave the finish characters off. And then when somebody types in that part of the number, P21 is just going to prompt you and go, which one of these did you mean? And then you get a list of all of the fasteners meeting that, type, diameter, length, whatever. And here's a list of all the different finishes we have that for. I think that's a great way to use it.
Let me ask you this though.
Yeah.
Like, how does it work with, let's say for some, like in our description, we call this a washer, blah, blah, blah. But if somebody put the short code washer, like, is it going to register that it is a short code, or because it's also in descriptions, is it just going to kind of treat it as an inline? Like, how would that work?
In inline search, inline search, I believe, matches with ORs. So any hit in inline search, it would float in there. Now, I think the thing about that is at the end of the day, I believe it's alphabetized. The results are by item ID. So no matter what it is, washer, it's still gonna populate wherever B and D 001991 comes up. So this is really more about if you like. I don't think this works as well or doesn't work at all in search. This is like when you're in the item ID field, it's going through a hierarchy to try to match up, right?
Gotcha.
And that hierarchy, we need to cover that today, because that hierarchy actually exists in here, and you can say, I want it to hit customer part numbers before it looks at short codes, before it looks at supplier item IDs.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so that's something we definitely need to cover in the next segment. Price family, I've seen this used a couple of times, but that's about it. I don't see this get used a lot. Do you?
We used it extensively for price sheets, or price pages, because you can base your pricing off of price family ID. And so it was a way to group those items together for discounts or multipliers or whatever you want to call them.
Okay, cool. I'm going to drop down to location detail, since we're really just talking about planning how to use these stratifying fields. Mm-hmm. I should have gone to classes. Let's go to classes. All right. You have a lot of different classes here. Now, these first three, those are specific to functionality, whether it's commissions or tag and hold. The next five are pretty much, you can do whatever you want with them. You go to class maintenance, you set up what those classes should be, and then you assign them by drop down.
I'm not a fan of the way the classes are managed in P21.
I am not a fan of the way that they are managed, but I will say
I'm a fan of using them, but not
yes.
creating them and managing them.
Yeah, so if you have... I like these classes a lot for reporting categories. When you have, specialized outside the system sales reporting or whatever, this field is on the item header. It is, and the best part about it is not free text. Someone cannot fat finger a value in a class. You have to pick it off of a list, which I think makes it very powerful for making sure that your data is normalized across all your items. So I like it for that a lot. So those are good. What other things do we have in here that we can...
Well, we're going to go over creating items. So,
yeah, we're going to go over that separately for sure. So.
Really, I will say that, can we go to the unit info? If you're going to plan anything out, please make sure unit of measure is in that conversation.
Right.
Because changing that midstream...
That's tough.
Because when you change your default, whether it's default pricing, purchasing, base, there's so many questions that ask you about changing pricing and cost, and it doesn't ever really work out. The biggest thing is, whatever your base unit is, it needs to be a unit size of 1.
Yeah, that's required. Yeah,
you don't go the other way and go, oh well, I'm gonna use a unit measure box and make that a 1, and then you have to divide that 1 by however many come in that box. It doesn't read nicely.
So, Matt, I am on the fly adding this to our outline.
Okay.
We will have we have to have a dedicated discussion on planning your base unit of measure.
So,
you are spot on. That is a huge landmine. That deserves its own topic for sure.
So we will we'll do a callback to that.
Yeah, no, it's on the list right there. See,
I saw you put it on the list.
Which means we actually have a list, which is pretty amazing for us. Okay.
Hey,
yeah. Hey. So please, yeah. No, I know it's a minefield. Product group ID. All right, this one's kind of near and dear for me. I would say of all of the stratification fields, this is the most important one to get right because it's ubiquitous throughout the system. Almost any screen that deals with item reporting or, PORG or all of these different things that allow you to say, hey, let's knock it down by X. X is product group. Very often you can knock things down by product group. Other thing that makes it very important is product groups are tied to general ledger accounts for revenue, cost of sales, and inventory accounts. So you can, by using product groups, like if on your profit and loss statement you say, hey, look, we want to track sales of these 5 major product groups separately, then that's what you use product groups for. And you can have subgroups of them and just roll them all into the same GL account. But my point is putting something in a product group can have the effect of automatically sorting the data in your income statement or your profit and loss statement. So think about how you want to use it. You may not care. Maybe it's just sales. Okay, fine. Assign every product group to the same GL account and don't worry about it. But if you want that type of control and visibility, this is the spot where you're going to get it.
Yeah, and when you change that product group, it'll ask you, do you want to apply those GL accounts to it? I will say this is also strange. It's always been strange for me. There is actually a field in the INV mass table called default product group.
Yeah, it's not I'm guessing it's legacy because I've tried putting it on screen before. It's not editable.
Yeah.
I have tried populating it. It does not affect anything on the bottom half. So I'm thinking it's just from.
I always found that very strange. Now the nice thing is, if you had like 100 locations, you can right click on it and you can right click on it and apply to all locations or apply to multiple or something like that. So I don't know why it's not a default. Maybe because it's tied to GL and somebody didn't want it to do that.
Hit that way, yeah. I don't know.
But when you do the copy to other locations, it allows you to pick the locations you want to copy it to. Can you go back to pre-thinking? The track bins thing. If you are in any consultant worth their
salt,
worth anything,
salt,
should be asking you, do you intend to ever track bins or use a wireless bin system? If you are 10% maybe,
check that checkbox.
Check that checkbox. You should put everything in no bin. Do not create any other bins in the system. Just no bin. That way, nobody has to think about bins until it's time to. Now, if you start adding multiple bins in there, it can get
messy.
So just put, and again, Epicor should tell you this. They did tell us because we worked with them some on our implementation in my previous life. But don't go, nah, we're never going to do bins. Actually, you know what? Even if you say you're never going to do bins, do it anyways.
Never say never.
You want to talk about a pain in the butt of changing something midstream? That's that.
Yeah, that is
because
100%.
There's not just a flip a switch and all this stuff is now in this bin. There's bin transfers or adjust out and adjust. It's not fun.